gives you some tips and pointers. So this will be a recording that can go out as well, so don't worry about anything like that, and we'll try and cover as much content for you as we can. I'll just hand it straight over to John. Thank you, John.
Brilliant, thanks Alex. So yeah, as mentioned, my name's John and I work at the University of Cumbria as an outreach officer. So I've been asked along as part of this series of talks to deliver a session today on student finance. So we'll get into all things student finance, covering various different topics that you maybe have questions about or thoughts on, and hopefully this session, it is just a short session, will give you a little bit of a further insight into student finance if you're a student that is thinking of applying for university in the future, or you're a student who's thinking of going through that process in the near future, really, and you're thinking of making an application to university or to study undergraduate study this year. What I'm just going to do before I start moving the slides is knock my camera off, just because, as Alex mentioned, we are going to record this session so that it can be sent out and rewatched. And I'm just conscious to avoid any lag or any delay in the connection from my broadband at this end. So I'll just quickly knock my camera off and then we'll make a start with the session. So hopefully you should all still be able to hear me. And like I say, we'll just make a start talking about student finance. So what today's short talk is going to cover is largely based around applying for student finance related to undergraduate study through Student Finance England. So there is obviously other aspects to student finance if you're applying for different levels of study as well. And if you're applying through a different student finance governing body, which I'll mention at the end of the slide, at the end of the presentation on a slide of where to find out further information. But all information is correct as of this February 2021, in terms of the stats and the figures that we talk through, and all figures do relate to Student Finance England. So just to keep that in mind as we talk through the presentation. So what we're going to cover in today's talk will largely be tuition fees and maintenance loans, how repayments work of student finance, how you can apply, and then additionally having a real quick look at scholarships, grants and bursaries. So ultimately, the two main costs associated with studying at university are your tuition fees and paying for your course, and then your living costs. So your costs associated with living and supporting yourself through your time of study. So student finance can support with both of those areas, and we'll have a little further look now into how that it can support. So tuition fees and loans, we'll make a start looking at tuition fees in the first instance. So tuition fees cover everything that you can think of associated to your education at university. So your lectures, seminars, tutorials, access to the library and the resources within the library, any computer facilities, technology that you have access to, and any additional support and wellbeing services, and then even things in the future such as your graduation ceremony. So your tuition fee encompasses all of that learning and all of that experience with that you gain from university and that you have access to through your time at university. And it's paid directly to your university or course provider. So it is money that is paid to the university to cover the costs of those things mentioned, as well as some other things as well that I obviously won't go through in a full list. And what tuition fees can be based on, if you like, sorry, what tuition fees stand at can vary each year, but they have stayed at a similar rate for the previous academic years now. This is based on the academic year previous, 2020 start date, and is set to be the tuition fees that we will see in 2021 as well. So for an undergraduate BA, BSc, BEng and LLB, tuition fees are set at £9,250 per academic year. That is the maximum that a university or provider can charge you for each academic year, £9,250. And you can see the different courses there, the different programs that have that same course attached. And what might vary is depending on if you're studying an integrated foundation year, or for example, opting to study with a sandwich or placement year, then those particular years of your academic study may have a varying tuition fee cost. So for example, the integrated foundation year may cost up to £6,000, or a placement year may cost 1,600. And then your additional years of study, your full-time years of full-time programs of study, say on a BA, would be 9,250. So those costs are per academic year, and that is the maximum that a university or provider can charge you each academic year. That's not to say that every course will charge that amount. You may find variation, but most will charge that maximum amount that they are entitled to charge you for your tuition fee. And like I say, it covers the cost of everything associated to your course. So you may be sat thinking, well, where do I get £9,250 from to pay for my undergraduate academic year of study? And I'm looking at a 3-year course, so 3 years times £9,250. And that is where a tuition fee loan can hopefully come in and support. So everybody is entitled to the tuition fee loan for their first full-time undergraduate degree. So if you're applying to university to undergraduate level for the first time, then everybody is entitled to tuition fee loan for their first full-time undergraduate degree. And it meets the full cost of the tuition for your tuition fees for your course. So those fees mentioned on the previous slide, you would apply for the relevant amount and it would cover that cost of tuition for your course. And the amount of tuition fee loan you can apply for does not depend on your household income. So often you'll hear sometimes from maybe students that you know currently, or peers, friends, family members, regards household income assessed student finance and what people are entitled to and what people aren't entitled to. That is not relevant when we're looking at the tuition fee loan. If you are eligible for Student Finance England and it is your first undergraduate degree, then you are entitled to apply for the tuition fee loan, which will meet the full cost of your tuition for each academic year. And you don't see any of that money. This isn't money that comes into your bank that you then need to pay to your university. So you've got £9,250 in your bank and you're thinking, how and when do I pay that to the university or provider? This is money that is paid directly from Student Finance England to your university, to your institute within your university to cover the cost of your fees. So that is how the tuition fee loan works. You don't see that money, it goes direct to the provider. And then it is a repayable part of student finance. It is a repayable loan, which we'll come on to looking at the repayment structure at the end of the session. So hopefully that's just a little bit of an overview in terms of tuition, what to expect from tuition fees, how much they look like, and how you'll be entitled to apply for support with your tuition fee loan to pay hopefully for that funding, to use that funding to pay for your university tuition experience. And then in addition to that, you may also look into applying for a maintenance loan. So we'll move on now to talking about maintenance loans and have a little overview and a look at maintenance loans, which can support ultimately with the cost of living. So everybody's cost of living is slightly different. And when studying at university, you'll have various outgoings and different people will have different outgoings. So think about what you need to budget for, what you currently budget for at the moment, and what in the future you might also have to plan into your budgeting and think about how much is that going to cost you, what incomings do you have, what savings, if any, do you have, and how does that look in terms of supporting yourself through your full-time education at university and studying at higher education. And things you may wish to consider are things such as rent, so accommodation, paying for your rent, your bills associated with that accommodation, so any utility bills, any phone bills. You maybe pay your own phone bill at the moment and you have to factor that in, or maybe you'll be starting to pay for different bills. So anything rent and bills is going to obviously be a large part of your outgoings to consider within your budget. Any travel, so you may be moving away from home for the first time. If you're choosing to travel, move to another city to study at university, then you might have a short commute to campus each day from your halls of residence or from your accommodation, but you might also want to travel home on weekends or on holidays. And how much does that cost? Are you going to be driving? Are you going to be paying public transport, traveling by train, traveling by bus? And what does that look like? And how can you factor that into your budgeting? You'll obviously have food. So everybody needs food. How does your food shop look? Do you budget for food at the moment, or do you live at home with parents, carers, guardians, and they cover that kind of thing? So what do you need to factor in terms of the cost of how much that costs per week, per month, and how much do you have income in to support with that? But you've then also got additional things for your course, such as books, resources, equipment that you might need to buy in terms of supporting with your learning that you feel you need for when you're at home, when you're working, a certain book, a certain piece of resource. But you've also got your social aspects as well. So socializing in general, Freshers Weeks, lots of social activity in Freshers Weeks, joining clubs, joining societies. Maybe you like going to the gym, exercising, clubs that have a cost associated to that. Anything like that that you can think of, you need to budget into your cost of living and think about, well, where can I get support with that and what do I already have? And then there's things obviously such as shopping. We all like new clothes, we all like new things. At what point of the year do you need those things? You might even have commitments to holidays and be thinking about, well, I've got this planned and that planned and I want to be able to do that. And how am I going to do that from what I have incoming already? So hopefully it's given you a lot to think about in terms of what you'll need to budget for, what your outgoings might be, and thinking about your own situation. Are you going to be hopefully moving away to university? Are you going to be living locally, maybe staying at home at to study at university, but you'll have a commute to think about, and maybe you're becoming more independent in terms of paying for certain things yourself as you get older and obviously start full-time higher education. So everybody's situation is slightly different. And this is where the maintenance loan can come into support. So you can apply to student finance for something called a maintenance loan. This is the loan that goes directly to you, the student, in 3 termly installments. So when you hear of students saying, you know, waiting for my student loan to come in, can't wait to get my student loan in, or I've got this plan to spend on my student loan, that is what they're talking about. They're talking about their maintenance loan that is paid directly to them. And like I say, it is broken into 3 termly installments. And the amount you are entitled to may depend on your household income, whether you live with your parents or whether you study in or out of London where the cost of living is higher. So what that ultimately means is it is means tested. You'll sometimes hear it referred to. And a maintenance loan is also repayable, and it's put into one repayment structure with the tuition fee loan, which again we'll cover at the end of the slides. So thinking about a maintenance loan and thinking about that budgeting, you might have in mind to be working part-time, or you might already work part-time and have some savings and be thinking of using that to support yourself through university, which is fantastic. One thing to really bear in mind with the maintenance loan is, like I say, is potentially dependent on your household income and where you're studying, and you'll be entitled to a certain amount, but that amount may not necessarily cover everything we've just discussed on the last slide. So you will need to factor in, do you need to be working part-time alongside your studies? Do you need to have any savings before you go, or be considering what accommodation you're going to apply for in line with your maintenance loan? So let's take just a little bit of a further look at how much maintenance loan you're entitled to per year. So these are just loose examples, broad examples, and I'll tell you about how to look into this in a little more detail for yourself. But say, for example, that top line there, you're going to be living at home, studying somewhere throughout the UK that isn't London, if you like, then you may be entitled to up to £7,987. If, say, you're studying away from home and again, studying outside of London, so you're from Cumbria, but you move to Manchester, or you move to Liverpool, or another city, another town in the country outside of London, you're studying away from home, you may be entitled up to £9,488. Or if you're studying away from home and you're studying in London, a university based in London, then you may be entitled up to £12,382. And like I say, those are broken down, those figures there that are used in those examples are broken down into 3 termly installments. So the 12,382, for example, would be broken down into 3 installments. Usually those installments are paid in and around the start of the first academic term, so September time when you start university. The second termly installment is in and around January time when you go back after Christmas and New Year, and the third being in and around Easter time, depending on what time of year Easter is. So they're split across those terms, across those academic semesters for you to receive in your bank and to support. And then starting to think about, well, what else impacts the maintenance loan? And when we use that term household income, what do we mean? So various factors can impact the maintenance loan, the main factor being household income. And depending on your household income can influence how much you're entitled to in regards to maintenance loan. So I'll let you have a look at that in your own time in regards to what will maybe apply to you if you have an awareness of what your household income is, what your parents earn, that kind of thing. Then you can maybe start to see across that table what you'd potentially be entitled to as a maximum. Now, one thing to note and one thing to keep in mind is often you will hear students, again, if you're talking to peers, you're talking to people who go to university at the moment, that will receive different amounts of maintenance loan. And that is due to personal circumstances and personal factors such as household income. But one thing just to keep in mind is that all students will be entitled to some form of maintenance loan. It is up to you if you choose to apply for a maintenance loan, just as it is if you choose to apply for a tuition fee loan. Some people, if they're living at home and they have a certain budget already, they work part-time, choose not to apply for a maintenance loan. Some students, even though living at home, do apply for a maintenance loan because it's there as additional support in terms of supporting you through your time of study. So even if it is the minimum amount that you're entitled to, so for example, your parental income is over £58,220, then you will still be entitled to a minimum amount depending on where it is that you're studying. So you can look along the rows and see what that minimum amount will be, and you will still be eligible for that if you are eligible for student finance. So everybody is entitled to some form of maintenance loan, the idea being that it is there to support you through, alongside with hopefully some support from parents and any other additional sources of income that you have, such as part-time work. There is extra help available as well in terms of support through childcare grants, parents' learning allowance, adult dependent grants, and disabled students allowance. You can go to the gov.uk/student finance calculator page, and before you even make an application, start to get a bearing on what you may be entitled to, including any of that extra help. So you'll be able to put in some rough ideas of what your household income may be, what your current situation is, where you're thinking of studying, and Student Finance Calculator will start to calculate obviously that eligibility criteria for you and give you an indication of the sort of entitlements that you'd be eligible for. So when we talk about repaying loans, just conscious of time and moving on, like I've mentioned throughout, your tuition fee loans and your maintenance loans are both repayable loans through student finance. So we'll just come on to how that works. And often people think about repaying loans and the debt associated to loans. So it's quite nice to talk like this and have people have a broader understanding of how the repayment structure works in regards to your loans. So when repaying your loans, your tuition fee loan and maintenance loan are combined into one single loan amount. Repayments are then 9% of your income over £26,575,000. So they're repayable from the April after graduation or leaving your course. So once you've graduated, usually graduation and courses finish in and around summertime. So the following April is when you would start to make repayments if your income is over that threshold of £26,575. If your salary falls below that amount, then repayments will stop. So if you are earning below that amount, you are not making any repayments on your student finance. If after that April, after graduation, you are earning over that amount, then you pay 9% of your income over that amount. And payments are automatically deducted from your salary. So anybody who has any experience of maybe working part-time at the moment, and when you receive your pay slip, you have your deductions on there for, say, PAYE tax, national insurance tax, whatever those deductions might be. There'll be an additional row that is student finance repayment, and that will calculate automatically based on your income what you owe to pay back that month. And if for whatever reason you haven't paid back your tuition fee loan, maintenance loan, your combined single loan, if you haven't paid back your loan after 30 years, then it is written off by the government, by gov.uk, by Student Loans Company. So it's a 30-year, very unique style of repaying a loan, very different to any commercial loan, any bank loan. It is based on how much you earn, not how much you owe. So that is a very, very different loan repayment structure to anything that is based around loans from a bank, where you're paying obviously in terms of how much you owe back to that bank, and you might have a set time period to pay that amount back. And if you don't, there's the sort of consequences of that. This is very different. It is very different in terms of it is based on how much you earn, not how much you owe. And just on the whole repayment structure, in terms of when you are making those repayments, you have taken out X amount of loan to support you through your time at university. These loans, again, different to and maybe different types of loans that you often associate taking a loan from a bank or a payday loan company, for example. Your student loans, tuition fee loans and maintenance loans do not affect any credit scores, any credit ratings. So it's not based on, well, you owe so much back for your student loan, that's going to impact your credit score when you come to apply for a mortgage or anything like that. It is a very unique repayment system in terms of its structure. So always keep that in mind, that it's based on how much you earn, not how much you owe. And as I've talked about in previous slides, often people start to consider student finance, they start to consider applying to university. And one of the big things they start to think about is the debt and everything that comes associated with debt, and how do you repay that debt? When actually thinking on based on how much you earn, not how much you owe, that hopefully simplifies some of that thought process for you. And one of the key factors really to be thinking about is that maintenance loan. If you require that maintenance loan, how much are you entitled to? What is the cost of your accommodation that you're looking at? What is your cost of living away from home at university? And how are you going to factor in how much you're entitled to through student finance and what other support you have access to give you that best experience at university? So that is really a real just sort of point to take away, is think about that sort of living costs through university. And then obviously that repaying your loan is very different to any different loans that you may have sort of had sort of thoughts on in the past. So an example of that, to put it into sort of context, if you like, is real quick example. A graduate earns £27,000 a year before tax, which is equivalent to £2,250 per month. So this is £425 over the 26,575 threshold we mentioned on the previous slide, or £36 over the monthly threshold capacity. So 9% of that £425 is roughly £36 a year. So you would be paying back roughly £3 a month on your student loan if you earned £27,000 a year before tax. So that's obviously how the thresholds stand at the moment. So it's just to put it into context for you in regards you're earning X amount over that threshold, and that is how it would be calculated in terms of your monthly repayment. And some more examples of that are listed here in this grid. So again, you can go on to gov.uk, different websites that I'll provide at the end of this session for you to have a look into this in your own time. But essentially you can see here yearly income before tax, and as that rises, so does your monthly loan repayments. But already, if you're quite quick with maths and you're thinking in your head, well, I've got 30 years to make those repayments, I'm going to be graduating and I don't start paying back until that April afterwards, and I'm going to be looking at internships or graduate positions where I'll be earning maybe close to that threshold, just below that threshold. It may be that you go 2 or 3 years without making any repayments based on the threshold and not meeting that threshold at the time. So that's 2, 3, 4 years potentially that you haven't paid anything back in towards your student finance repayments in that 30 years that you have to make those repayments. Hopefully we all graduate and go into fantastically well-paid jobs, and you will be making those repayments, and that's absolutely fine. But those that are quick at maths can start to calculate already, well, if I'm paying back 0 for the first 2 or 3 years, and then I'm earning £29,500, so I'm paying maybe £20 a month for a couple of years, am I ever going to be paying that full loan amount back of 3 academic years at £9,250, plus any additional maintenance loans that you took as well? So do factor that in, do have a play around with that in your own head, have a look on the calculators, have a look at this in your own time, which again, I'll signpost you onto in regards to how that loan repayment structure works, and calculate for yourself, right, well, I'm hoping to graduate, go into this position, or hopefully work in this sector. An average wage is this amount, a progression wage is a different amount, and what will I be looking to pay back monthly on my student loan? So do have a think of that and have a look into that in your own time. So in terms of applying, you apply online at gov.uk/student finance, and you apply in usually the February-March time prior to the September that you're applying to university for. The first time you apply, you need to provide proof of your identity. So you need to prove your identity via either a valid in-date passport, or you may be asked to send in evidence of your birth certificate. If you apply for student finance that depends on household income, such as that maintenance loan, then your parents or partner, depending on your situation, will need to provide financial information as well. So usually their national insurance number and anything associated with any financial information they need to provide. You can apply for both tuition fee loans and maintenance loans at the same time. And like I say, you usually apply the February before the September you intend to start. So student finance for example, for this September 2021 starts, went live, I think it was just at the end of February, and students could make those applications. Usually what student finance do is put up a deadline of in and around late May. They say that you should hope and aim to have your student finance application complete by a set date at the end of May. You can still apply after this, so it wouldn't close, it doesn't stop you applying for student finance after that date, but you're not guaranteed to get your first loan payments in. So for example, those maintenance loans on time with everybody else who meets that deadline. So say, for example, again, we use that example of you live in Cumbria at the moment, but you're going to be applying to university, moving away from home for the first time. Then you might be thinking, I need that maintenance loan in September to pay for accommodation, to pay for bills, etc. Then you would want to be aiming to get your application in before the deadline that student finance set, so that you can be guaranteed to get your loan payments in on time. Otherwise, there's no guarantee of when you'll receive that first payment into your bank. It might be during that first academic term, into the late September, into October, whenever they get time to process it. And with that said, you do not need a confirmed place to apply for your student loan. So it may be that through the UCAS cycle, you've applied to your 5 choices or however many choices you've applied to, and you haven't yet heard back from all of your choices, or you're awaiting an interview, or you haven't fully decided where exactly it is you'd like to apply to. You can apply for student finance, where you'd like to accept, sorry. You can apply for student finance using what in your head or what you intend to be your first choice. So what you are heart set on studying, where you're heart set on studying, apply for student finance and use that choice in the application for the tuition fee loan. And if for whatever reason things change, you can go back in at a later date and change that element of your application. So for example, you've changed the university you've applied to, or you've changed the course that you're accepting. So you can go back in, make those amendments and confirm that at a later date. But do start your application so that you can have everything processed, such as any financial evidence that you need to provide. So again, just a heads up that you can make that application, you can start your student finance at any time from February onwards in the academic year that you're applying to. And then just something to remember before we finish on the scholarships and bursaries slide. So you reapply each year for your loans. Most of your information will be saved, and household income and personal details may just need checking and updating. If you have moved or financial personal circumstances have changed, then you will need to update student finance of that. You must contact student finance if, for example, you're taking a break from your studies, or your circumstances have changed in regards to what you're studying, then you need to personally directly contact student finance. And then eligibility for additional funding is also reassessed each year. So some of that extra support that I mentioned, disabled support allowance, that kind of thing, may be reassessed each year as well. And then just really quickly to finish on, again, conscious of the time running on, scholarships, bursaries and grants. So further funding support and what to think of if you're starting to get an awareness or want to gain more of an understanding in regards to what you might be entitled to. So what's the difference? Well, scholarships are likely to be competitive and are often supported by potentially generous donors. So it might be based around academic ability or sporting ability, a scholarship that's competitive to almost apply for, and you'll gain additional financial support. Bursaries are usually non-competitive and they're automatic and based on financial need. So they may also be described as awards. And then grants are more often offered by trusts or charities that represent underrepresented groups. So they're often paid in either one-off payments. They may come in form of reduction to a course fee or accommodation costs, or termly payments alongside your loan. So it's just a real loose understanding or loose awareness of what you're looking into and what we mean by those different terms. And then how you can access or apply for them differ as well. So for bursaries, universities or government funding bodies, the student finance body will automatically assess your needs. So as you complete your student finance application, student finance will notify you if you're eligible for any particular bursaries, etc. For grants provided by other agencies, such as charities or trusts, such as the NHS Trust, for example, you'd need to approach them directly to possibly ask the question of, you're applying for this course at this university, is there any support or additional finance available to you in regards to what you're studying? And then each scholarship, bursary and grant has its own terms and conditions, including what's involved to apply. So ultimately the message is, don't be afraid to get in touch. If you have heard of previous people you know who've had additional support in the form of scholarships or bursaries and you think that might apply to you, then get in touch with the relevant provider. Ask somebody at the university. Here at the University of Cumbria, we have a money advice team, a student finance support team, more than happy for potential students, potential applicants to get in touch and ask any questions that they might have. And that is perfectly okay to do so. And again, with some of those external trusts, you'll find information on their website. You'll be able to look at detailed in regards to eligibility and criteria that you may need to meet. And you'll also find information on how to get in touch with these providers. So it is not a question to be afraid of asking. You can get in touch. It's important to you if it can help you through your time at university. So do just keep an eye and keep an ear open for what you can look out for in terms of additional support. So ultimately that's me finished, and more information can be found at cumbria.ac.uk/student finance. The gov.uk/student finance is where you make those applications to Student Finance England, and there's also lots of additional information and resource on there covering more of what we've talked about today. You'll find information on the student room as well with any student finance search, and there's a dedicated page within UCAS as well. You'll also be able to find information on the gov.uk website in regards if you're an EU student applying to university in the UK, and obviously the changes, the upcoming and current changes that are ongoing for those groups of students. So again, you'll be able to find more information on their website. And then highlighted are just the different student finance bodies as well. So we've talked today about Student Finance England, but if you're in Scotland applying through Student Finance Scotland, SAS, or Student Finance Wales, then obviously you can look direct on their websites as well for further information and any slight variations in regards to the application process and the eligibility and entitlements with regards to each of those bodies. So just to be aware of if you're watching from elsewhere in the UK as well. So that is me. I know I've really quickly talked through a lot of that. It's a lot of information. Hopefully, if you're watching on the recording, you can have a look back through the different slides, have a look at what's most relevant to you, and use that information to take away in your own thinking and your own sort of future in terms of applying to university and to student finance. You can contact us via our website. We have our live chat and phone lines open 5 days a week, Monday to Friday. And as mentioned, teams on hand to support with any questions